And as promised, today on TV, here on Brookline Interactive Group, we've got Ben Kaufman. Ben is running for town clerk in Brookline, running unopposed, but we wanted to get a chance to get to know him. And so we booked him for the show, and here he is. Ben, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me on.
So Ben, what's your story, man? Like, tell us where you came from, why this is interesting to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, but spent a lot of my upbringing in Brookline. I actually attended Ojai Shalom on Beacon Street. I went to college where I studied economics and political science. And after college, did a lot of campaign work. I've been living in Brookline, in Precinct 9, just north of JFK Crossing. I've been serving as the Brookline town meeting member from Precinct 9 for the last 2 years. And I've also spent the last 2 years working at the State House as a legislative aide to a state representative.
Huh. Is your boss any good?
I think he's all right. He does a pretty good job.
I hear he's got a pretty swell television show on Brookline Interactive Group. Yeah, so for those who don't know, Ben is my legislative aide, and sad for me, maybe we'll find out from Ben, good for everyone else, if he gets elected to the town clerk and leaves my office in the process. Ben, for those who don't know, what's the town clerk? What does the town clerk do? What are those responsibilities?
The town clerk does a lot of different things. Most people know the town clerk's office because of the work that they do on elections. They're in charge of voter registration and ensuring that our elections are administered correctly. But they also do a lot of other really, really important work. Town meeting minutes and minutes from select board and other boards are all posted on the website by the town clerk's office. They also oversee marriage licenses, birth and death certificates, dog licenses, hunting and fishing licenses. And they're also the point of contact for any open meeting law requests or Freedom of Information Act requests in the town government. So the town clerk's office handles quite a large swath of things and is really the point of contact for a lot of people with Brookline's town government.
And of course, Pat Ward has been the town clerk for many, many years, running the office. And he's the only town clerk many folks in Brookline have ever known. What do you envision for the office going forward? You can sort of, all systems go, changes. Tell us what you think about what the future of the town clerk's office might be.
Absolutely, and we owe a tremendous debt to Pat and all the work that he has done. For me, when I look at the clerk's office, I want to really focus on equity and accessibility, on transparency, and on modernizing the office to bring it into the 21st century.
Those are things that I think we've had conversations about in different offices in town and across government more generally. When you're talking about equity and accessibility with respect to the town clerk's office, can you give us some examples of what that would entail, what that means, what that feels like?
Certainly. The town clerk's office, who administers the elections, are really kind of the focal point for ensuring equity within our town government. So a town clerk's office that brings the election to the people, brings it to where people are, and ensures more people can access the ballot is incredibly, incredibly valuable. The town clerk chooses polling locations and sites where people go to vote, and an independent town clerk would be able to ensure that polling places are chosen based on where they can be most easily accessed and most equitably accessed for everybody in the town. As a town clerk, I also think we should look into expanding the hours of early voting outside of 9 to 5 so people can come before and after work. And I also think there should be an exploration of locations for early voting, not only having it into town hall where it can be somewhat inaccessible, but also potentially moving it to libraries or to schools or to fire stations, other places where people could access the ballot. And that ability to meet people where they are and meet people in their community to make it easier and reduce the barriers to accessing the ballot and the election is something that's incredibly important and will bring more voices into Brookline's town government. And that's something that I think the clerk's office should be looking at doing.
What about What about transparency? The word gets thrown around a lot. Sometimes folks don't dig into the details. With respect to the town clerk's office, what would transparency entail, and why would that be valuable for the residents of Brookline?
So the clerk's office is really the point of contact and of information for what's going on in our town government. The clerk's office will be responsible for posting meeting minutes and votes online, and modernizing that system so that it is really a transparent system where you can go onto the website and easily decipher what's been going on in town government. That means posting minutes in a timely fashion in a way that's recognizable, posting votes both from select board and other boards as well as from town meeting about what's been going on. So you can go and you can see the voting record for your elected officials, as well as being transparent about opportunities to get involved in town government, being transparent about public comments, about opportunities for appointed positions and opportunities for elected positions, so that anybody who wants to be more involved in town government doesn't have to go digging through an archaic website or have to know somebody who's already in the town. They're able to go on their own, find the information, and know what's happening with their town government.
And I want to poke a little bit further. You haven't mentioned it yet, how the town clerk's office ties in with the open meeting law and the Freedom of Information Act. We're talking about transparency, and so maybe you could explore that relationship a little bit and help viewers understand what the role is, and if there is room for any changes there. We'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely. The town clerk's office is responsible for handling any open meeting law requests and Freedom of Information Act requests. And right now we have a fairly disjointed process within town hall, within the town government, of how to keep track of those documents. So for the town clerk, I would encourage implementing policies about keeping track of town documents and internal communications, encouraging elected officials to utilize a Town of Brookline email address, which is easier to keep separate from someone's personal email address, and work closely with town council to ensure that we are compliant with all laws and that we are easily accessible. If somebody does have one of those requests, can come through the town clerk's office and it can be handled efficiently and correctly.
Thank you. You also mentioned modernization as a tenet of your candidacy. The town clerk's office, I suppose, is hundreds of years old at this point, right? What does it mean to modernize the office? How would that impact folks who are volunteers within our government? And how would that impact residents who aren't directly tied with town meeting or the sixth floor, but just want to interact day to day in the town? Tell us about this modernization.
Yeah, so I grew up in the internet era, and I grew up with things being digital and being able to be accessed online. And our town government is not very accessible online and is not very clear online. So there are a lot of things that I would do within the town clerk's office. I would work on digitizing some of the town mailings that go out. There are some that have to be done on paper, but making an easier opt-out process so that people can access information digitally instead of having to spend lots of money and waste lots of paper mailing large packets of information around the town. I also would work on digitizing license and certificate applications. I always think it's interesting that I can register my car online, but I can't register my dog online. And digitizing the databases where we keep track of that information, keeping track of a birth, death, marriage certificate, all of that information, people should be able to go into the town hall and have it be accessed quickly. But there's a tremendous amount of time and manpower that is spent digging through old boxes full of paper when a lot of that information should be digitized and made available online. And I think within all of that, it needs a revamp of the town clerk's website so that that information is easily available, is easily accessible, it's very intuitive. People don't have to spend hours digging through an archaic website trying to find the information. It should be very easy for somebody to sort out.
It sounds like a lot of work. Maybe work that pays off at some point. I think in some ways the most obvious thing the town clerk does is manage the local elections. And that doesn't just mean the May elections, of course. That means, you'd be in charge of the presidential election within Brookline, of primaries, of caucuses like the Democratic Town Caucus. Um, how would you say the town has done in terms of managing elections in the past? And do you think there's opportunity for improvement?
Yeah, I think this past year has really shown a lot of the issues that can come from a clerk's office that's not receiving the support that they need from the rest of the town government. The clerk's office did a really admirable job in really tough circumstances, dealing without longtime clerk Pat Ward and having to work through a pandemic. But there were quite a few issues this past year. There were a lot of cases where people had applied for absentee ballots or mail-in ballots and didn't get their ballot in time, or they got their ballot but it was incorrect. It had the wrong party in a primary, or it was for the wrong precinct, which really raised a lot of questions about whether or not they would be considered valid votes, and a lot of confusion and concern among people. I myself didn't receive my requested mail-in ballot and was faced with the decision of, do I have to go into a polling location during a global pandemic or give up my opportunity to engage in the political process. And I think that that is an issue that an independent town clerk would be able to deal with a lot more effectively. They'd be able to advocate very strongly for additional staffing, for additional funding to handle an influx in mail-in voting and the change situation that has happened because of the COVID pandemic. And I really think that there's a lot of opportunities for improvement, because anytime somebody's ballot is messed up or they do not get it on time, that's a really, really big issue.
I've noticed you've used the phrase independent town clerk several times. I picked up on it. I'm not sure that all the viewers know that on the ballot this spring, not only will the choice of town clerk appear, for which there is but one candidate, Ben Kaufman, but there will be a separate ballot question that asks voters, would you like to continue electing the town clerk, or would you prefer the select board appoint the town clerk? And I suppose the question will be phrased, would you like the selectmen to appoint the town clerk? And that the yes position would be to appoint, whereas the no position would be to retain the voter's choice in choosing the town clerk. What do you think about this question? Do you have any sense on what you'd like to see? How do you think you're going to vote on it, I'll say?
Absolutely. I'm planning on voting no on that ballot question. I think we need an elected clerk to keep power with the voters of Brookline. We trust the voters of Brookline to make the right decisions, and ensuring that the power to oversee elections sits with the voters is the best way to ensure that they have a voice and ensure accountability throughout our government. So voters would benefit from having a town clerk who's responsive to them, not to another elected office. And an elected town clerk could be a stronger advocate for the things that the voters want and be more accountable to the voters. And I think that's something that we really need in Brookline.
Have you ever officiated a wedding?
I have not, but I am excited at the opportunity to do so.
That's one of the things the town clerks have historically done, although I will say that in the past year, I know the town clerk's office has really, out of caution, right, out of concern for COVID, really restricted or reduced its services. As far as I know, everything's back. It took a while, and in fact, there was a period when no one was able to get married, at least not in Brookline. But it sounds like that's a fun part of the job, right? Tying knots, as they say. So, you got you got a tuxedo? You feel like you're ready for this?
I do, and I'm going to have to make sure that I work on my announcing voice to make it very official. But I think there's also an important point there about one of the first things that I would change is town clerk. Our clerk's office had been closed for a large chunk of last year due to the COVID pandemic. And even now it's open, but it's only by appointment, and it can be tricky to try to figure out how to go in and get access to those resources. So one of the first things that I would do is work with the health department and work on reopening the clerk's office so that more people could access those resources while prioritizing the health of the general public and of the employees of the clerk's office. But it's time that we have access to those resources again.
And do you feel, let me say it this way, it is customary that the town clerk, who is a town meeting member, abstain from voting in town meetings. Of course, you are a town meeting member in Precinct 9, and you've been throwing your weight around as a local representative voting on the issues, you feel ready to put a pause on that and merely, I would say, or quietly record the will of others? Are you ready to sort of stay out of it?
I certainly am. Being able to serve Precinct 9 in town meeting has been an honor and a really phenomenal way for me to engage with the town and ensure that I'm a voice for my neighbors in town meeting. But having the ability to sit back and report what's happening without influencing it is actually something that I do a lot in my day job, working for the representative. A lot of my job is to observe and report and not necessarily make my opinions known. And that's something that I look forward to helping facilitate alongside our new town moderator, what's going on in town meeting.
So I'll bite on that hook. You dangled it out there. I'll grab it. What about your current job has prepared you to be town clerk? What are the skills you'll take over, and where are the opportunities to grow?
Absolutely. So I am the only staff member in Representative Vitolo's office, which means that I've had to handle pretty much everything that's come through the office, which has given me a really great opportunity to engage with town government and different town departments, to engage with our constituents here in Brookline, and to help people with issues ranging from unemployment requests to trying to get their voter registration sorted out. A lot of the skills about organization, about working with others, and engaging with constituents to ensure people have the information that they need in order to solve any of the issues that they've been having with government is definitely something that I look forward to bringing over into the town clerk's office. And it doesn't hurt what Representative Vitolo has been serving as the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Election Laws. So especially with state law that specifically is affecting the town clerk's office, we've gotten to see quite a bit of that and have that information and that experience will translate over if I am the town clerk.
You going to keep dog treats in the office? Not just for snacks for you, but for the dogs?
I think that's one of the things I'd have to discuss with the health department. Not only making sure that we're safe for people who might have COVID, but also ensure it's a dog friendly and dog safe office for people who are coming in. But certainly, I look forward to the opportunity to walk around to all of the parks in Brookline and see all the dogs who are participating in the Green Dog program, and have that opportunity to speak to some of the furrier constituents that we might have.
I got to be honest. I'm running out of questions here. We're chewing through them pretty quickly. So I'll throw it back at you. What else should we be thinking about with respect to the town clerk? How does the town clerk interact with our lives in ways that we're not always cognizant of?
I think one of the things that people forget a lot is the importance of local government. We think a lot and talk a lot about what's happening at the federal level, and that's obviously important. But a lot of the decisions that impact your daily life comes from your town government. So having a clerk who is there to ensure that you know what's going on, ensure that you have access to your birth certificate, death certificates, marriage licenses, dog registration, hunting and fishing licenses, and one who is really ensuring that there is equitable and accessible ballots and polling locations so that people can voice their opinions and make sure that their government is reflective of them. That's something that's incredibly, incredibly impactful. Having a clerk who is working to ensure transparency, who's working to ensure accessibility and equity, would ensure that voters have the voice that they need, and would make sure that you are able to vote out people who you disagree with, vote in people who you do agree with, and make sure that we have the best town government that we can here in Brookline. We really have the opportunity, I think, in all of these places to be leaders for the Commonwealth and be leaders for the country, and having that opportunity as a clerk to implement some of those changes and to be that model is something that's very, very exciting.
Now, historically, on election days, town clerk Pat Ward has driven around in a police cruiser. You feel like you're up to that? You feel like you're ready to hop behind the wheel of one of those Ford Tauruses or Dodge Chargers or whatever they're in today, and tool around town in a cop car?
I would hope to look into whether or not that's the best use of resources and funds, but I definitely think being active, visible, and available throughout election day to respond to issues that are going on. I do have some experience in a police car. Thankfully, all good experiences in a police car. I have past experience working at the Middlesex Sheriff's Office, where I did drive the sheriff's car with the lights and everything. So I do have some of that experience, but I want to make sure that we're utilizing all of the resources that we have properly and making sure that everything's going off well on election day.
Well, Ben, thanks for taking some time to spend with us. Folks, Ben Kaufman, he's running for Town Clerk. The election is on Star Wars Day, May 4th. May the 4th be with you and also with you. And there's a lot of competitive races out there: select board, school committee, special election, moderator. And of course, there are some ballot questions, including should we town adopt the Community Preservation Act? And the one we mentioned earlier, should the town move to an appointed town clerk model rather than our current elected town clerk model? So all that and more, please stay tuned in the coming weeks. This show will be interviewing candidates for select board, candidates for the school committee special election seat, candidates for moderator, all competitive townwide elections. And we hope that you will tune in right here at Brookline Interactive Group to watch me, State Representative Tommy Vitolo, chat it up with some candidates. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.